Recording. Minimizing. Good afternoon. My name is NIkas, and I'm an alcoholic who likes to shoot meth alcoholically.
Good morning, NIkas.
Welcome to the first of a series called The Great Sober Sex Forum. I just want to kind of disclaim, anything that I say here is not AA related, or I don't speak for AA as a whole, I don't speak for CMA as a whole, I don't speak for the AT Center as a whole. Anything I say for me personally is because this is what has become true for me. It's what I have learned. It's been my process, my learning, my growth process. So I'm just sharing that. It's my experience. This group actually started with the original Indulgent Abstainers, was a little online secret Facebook group that started because I went to Flex and posted some pictures about having a great fucking time there. And I had a bunch of people say, I want to go with you. So it started out as a sort of sober support network for people who wanted to get their feet or their dick wet back at sex clubs. And it actually grew really quickly. But it also got a lot of controversy. There was a whole bunch of pushback in the fucking community about that. And what I really realized was that the pushback was all just fear-based stuff. It was all people talking about like, you don't know what you're doing. You could get people to relapse. You're fucking working and dangerous. And I was like, okay, wait, hold on one second. Now that doesn't sound like AA in the book. That sounds like fear. Mm-hmm. So what I really realized was that what we need to do is talk about this subject. We need to educate each other. We need to share our experience, strength, and hope over the subject of sex. So as a research experiment, I went to one of the other treatment facilities workshops on sex. And what I found was it was a great workshop. It was a little more on the tantric sex kind of thing, which I was sitting around the table and I saw that there's a lot of people that were in the room that were newcomers, and the whole idea of tantric sex is like so fucking far off in the future. People want to know, like, where do I stick my dick? What do I do next? What do I do if drugs come out? You know, so it's like there's like all these really simple things that we all wanted to people I saw wanted to talk about it, and instead we did meditations and talked about moving our sex energy from our root chakra to the tip of our tongue, and it didn't make any sense to me, although I recognize, because I'm a spiritual guy, I recognize there's value to that stuff, but I recognize that the fucking leader was super hot and I didn't care because I just wanted to fucking suck his dick. So I stayed. When we first get to the rooms, we need an overhaul in our sex department. That's what the book says. And the only way I've kind of found that we can accomplish this overhaul is through talking about it, through discussing it. We talk about it, you go explore, you come back, you talk some more. You go explore. You find out what works, you find out what doesn't work, and that's the way kind of this overhaul begins to work. Then you do your 4-step inventory, your sexual inventory, and you write a sexual ideal, which we're going to work on later today here in a workshop as a group, and that's how you do it. But this whole process is about actually doing it. So the goal of the seminar is to get everybody to relearn how to have sex, and for people to have inquisitive, comfortable, and satisfied, and experienced sober sexual beings. Everybody here's got a cock, right?
Yes.
Everybody likes to play with their dicks? Right? Everybody likes to play with other people's dicks?
Yes.
Right, okay, good. So, clear on that. So, the thing that we got to become comfortable with is, we know we all like to fucking play with dick, and we all like to fucking fuck ass and all that stuff, but we got to become comfortable with is the other stuff, which is the relationship stuff. We got to be comfortable with being honest, being forthright, disclosing whatever needs to be disclosed, asking for what we want. That's a big one. You know, people like, yeah, sure, anything. You know, it's like, but no, what do you really want? Do you want to be dominated? Do you want to be fisted? What do you want? Talk about it. We want to know that that we're not fearful of actually walking into a situation and finding a meth pipe, right? So we want to know that that's a possibility out there. We go out into the world, and that's an absolute possibility. You may run into the pipe. You may run into the syringe. And as much as we can do to kind of keep ourselves in that safety zone, the reality is it's out there. And so we want to know that we have a spiritual connection. We want to know that we have a power greater than ourselves. that has restored us to sanity, and that will give us a daily reprieve, contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. That's what it says in the book. I'm going to talk about God a lot, and spirituality and prayer and meditation a lot, because that's just who the fuck I am. Can't help it. It's really my experience that this is a God program. It's not a relapse prevention program. So I learned in the book that I'm powerless. So my willpower at certain times becomes completely unable to patrol itself. You know, this peculiar mental twist, something happens, and all of a sudden my willpower is gone. So the whole idea of relapse prevention, yes, okay, it's a good idea to stay out of slippery places and go to, but really, at the end of the day, that's not what keeps me sober. What keeps me sober is my connection to source, whatever that is, source is thing for you. So everyone knows the reading that we read at the beginning of most meetings, the chapter 5 reading, right? At the end of that reading, it says, A, that we're alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. That's step 1. B, that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. That's part of step 2. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. That's also part of step 3. Anybody know what the next line in the book is? Nope. The next line says, being convinced. We are now at step 3. So being convinced that I'm an alcoholic and I can't manage my own life, right? B, that probably no human power, that means my sponsor, that means my mommy, my daddy, my boyfriend, my lover, my husband, the judge, no one, including me, can't help myself, right? So that's what beyond human aid means. No fucking human, not even your sponsor, nobody at a meeting can help you. They can't keep you sober because you're going to be alone one day, right? So beyond human aid means no people. But see, God could and would if he were sought. So is everybody in the process of soughting? And what I see, what I observe at meetings is I see a lot of people who don't apparently look, and this is just me talking, don't look like they're soughting. They don't look like they've got a daily spiritual plan, a prayer and meditation program. It doesn't look like they're connecting to God. So, that being convinced we were at step 3. Step 3 is turn your will and your life over to the care of the God of your own understanding. Your will and your life, that's your thoughts, your thinking, and your life is everything else, which is everything, basically. So I always tell sponsees, reading the fine print, motherfucker. Because everything means like your job life, your fucking video game life, your app life, your Facebook life, everything, including your sex life. So in my humble opinion, the fear of sober sex and all the things that the fear brings up in people is probably the number one obstacle facing our community of people, our gay community, that coming off of meth. That's the one thing, when people go out, what do? They fuck. So when they come back, you ask them and they're like, oh yeah, I had sex, or I didn't have sex, or, it's all about the sex thing. Well, that's a little joke here. I said, actually the sex is the number 2. The number 1 issue is this is just me personally talking, the prayer and meditation, the connecting to this higher source, this soughting. I don't hear it. I think that's our number 1 issue out there in the community. It's like people are not actually looking for this higher power. They're just going about doing whatever the fuck they do and just go to meetings and whatever. So sex is kind of an uncomfortable topic for most people to talk about. Your sponsors kind of delay it and hope you'll sort it out. Meetings kind of shut you down because it's too triggering. Friends don't talk about it because nobody wants to be called a slut or a whore. And the whole sex thing doesn't really get talked about. So the process of becoming comfortable with the sober sex life isn't an overnight process, but it's something that has to be started at some point. Hopefully you got a good sponsor to walk you through this process. And I think you all know Terry Sue. Terry Sue was at a meeting, a roundup in San Francisco about 4 years ago or something. 5 years ago. And I heard Terry Sue from talk. She was a main speaker from the podium say, if you don't have the best sponsor in AA, get another one. And you know what? That ringed very, very true to me because as I understood it, my first sponsor, which I'm going to talk about later in my sex part, he was great. He got me started down the path. But what I soon recognized was he didn't know the directions of the book, and this other guy knew the actual fucking directions. So in 1939, they wrote the directions and the steps, and they put it in the book. And I knew that's what I needed to learn. So I changed sponsors to a guy that knew the book. And this guy was a pretty humble, guy. He used to say things like, dude, I fucked up my life really bad, and I have to have God run my whole life. I turn to God when I got questions. So what in the fuck would make me think I can run your life? Or I can tell other people what the hell to do. He says, this is ridiculous. He says, do you ever hear somebody in a meeting that tells you, you need to do this, and you need to do this? He said, just fucking turn around and run. Because those people obviously don't know what AA is about. Because this is about suggestion. This is about opening people's eyes, not telling people what they need to do. So. Okay, a couple housekeeping items. Whatever we say here, keep it here. It's kind of like Vegas. Fun Vegas. The format of the day, everybody's got the format on the first sheet of paper there. The three different speakers, everybody's got their different opinion up here. Everybody's got a different journey. Everybody's got a different walk on this thing. So just know that everybody, I didn't want this to be the fucking NIkas show, even though I got the mic right now. I wanted to make sure everybody's voice got heard here. So, no silly questions. And, you might think your question is silly or stupid or whatever. Talk about it. The forum is not a substitute for anything. It's not a substitute for working with your sponsor, not a substitute for doing steps. It's in addition to things. It's above and beyond. It's kind of taking everything that you've learned and kind of growing with it. If you get triggered because someone's talking about something, talk about that. Bring that up. Okay? And if you need a meeting after this, there's a lovely meeting, Sex and Sobriety, right after this, just down the stairs, where you can decompress through everything. This is MJ. This is Shawn. What I think I want to do next is actually go through, now I'm going to run a little over in my first 15 minutes of presentation, but I'm going to cut my actually talk about sex a little short, so I time the two and it works out just fine. So I'd like to talk about, go to the part, chapter 5 in the big book, where it says talk about sex, or now about sex, sorry. So, what does the big book have to say about sex? It says many of us need an overhauling. And what is an overhaul? An overhaul, when you take your car in and you take your engine to be overhauled, it means they take it out, they take it apart, they examine it, they repair it, they put it back together, and they stick it back in the engine. That's what an overhaul is. That means like everything gets taken care of. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. Human opinions, right? Not God's opinion, but humans' opinions. One voice cries that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voice who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think that we do not have enough of it, or it's not the right kind. They see the significance everywhere. One school would allow a man no flavor for his fare, vanilla, while the other one would have a straight pepper diet. Okay, that's more wild than mild. We want to stay out of this controversy. What? We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter, judge, jury, decider, of anyone's sex conduct. So that line right there is an important line out there in the meetings when I hear people fucking talking, and I was like, dude, come on now. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? Now, this is going to talk about the inventory process. We reviewed our own contact over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where had we been at fault? So all these things that we just talked about right here, these are all things ways in which we act. So when we're inventorying our sexual inventory, we're trying to find out what part of us is not working, what part of us is broken. So we get this all down on paper and we look at it. And the amazing thing in the fourth step is you're not asked to actually change anything. Actually, the one thing I learned the other day, I realized this is you're not actually asked to change anything anywhere in the steps. You're just asked to look at it, share it with somebody else, and turn it over to God and let God handle it for you. You're actually not asked to do anything except turn it over to God. I didn't notice that. I just had a big aha moment. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life, which we're going to do at the very end of this thing. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We ask God. Anytime you see "we ask God" in the big book, that's a prayer. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remembered that always our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal, our personal one, this is my own ideal, turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. It doesn't say we should or we ought to or maybe we will. It says we must. There's 149. 149 musts in the big book. Yes, this is a program of suggestion, but it's a suggestion like if your airplane is going down, the pilot says, "Here, I suggest you put this fucking parachute on and jump out the window." That's the kind of suggestion we got going on here. So we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer... Did I skip? No, sorry. We ask God to mold our... Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring still more harm in doing so. Ninth step. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, prayer and meditation with sex. Who else doing that? Raise your hands. Mm-hmm. We ask what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. I love that sentence right there, because God can tell me the right thing to do. He can give me intuition. Can you tell? But if this thing up here wants what it wants, it doesn't matter if the right answer came. The right answer will come if we want it. So we got to actually really truly want what God's got to offer. God alone can judge our sex situations. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. Wait, isn't my sponsor the final judge? No, it says here that we let God be the final judge. Okay. So we realize that some people are fanatical about sex as others are loose. I'm loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. And that's what I hear a lot of out there. Suppose we fall short of our chosen ideal and we stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only half truth. It depends on our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done, and we have an honest desire, not just a desire, but an honest one, to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and learn our lesson. If not, we are, and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to get drunk. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. So they're telling us right here in the book that, dude, get your shit together and start doing it right. Otherwise, you're going to get loaded. So, to sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal. For guidance in each questionable situation. Should I go to the sex club? Should I go to the sex party? Let me pray on it. Let me ask. And for sanity. And for the strength to do the right thing. So if God says no, zip your pants up and get the fuck out. That's what I need to do. Not, oh, but this is such a nice ass. Oh, beautiful cock. No. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge. That's a very technical term for horniness. When to yield would mean heartache. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, this is about the whole inventory process, we've written down a lot. We've listed and analyzed our resentments. We've begun to comprehend the futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see the terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even our enemies. Oof. Who's got patience, tolerance, and goodwill for your enemy? Strive. Right. Okay. We listed the people we hurt by our conduct, and we're willing to straighten things out. 9th step. In this book, you'll read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves, right? So we hope you are convinced that now God can remove from you whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. Steps 4 through 9 is to face and be rid of all the things that block you. And it's God that actually takes that away. If you've already made a decision in an inventory, 3rd and 4th step, your grosser handicaps, you've made a good beginning. That being so, you've swallowed and digested some big chunks about yourself. Bam. Who wants to be first?
Hi, my name is Shawn, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
Hi, Shawn.
Thanks for coming today, guys, and thanks, NIkas, for asking me. I have a lot of respect for this gentleman. We don't always agree on everything, and that's part of the value of my friendship with NIkas. I'm not here to be a contrarian voice, and I think my big disclaimer is going to be that I am a work in progress sexually. My sobriety date is March 19th, 2014, which means I just have 2 years. And I would offer that we're a work in progress until the day we die. Because as human beings, we continue to take in new information. For me, sex and sexuality in sobriety has been a large focus of my sobriety, and I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. As a little boy, I had a sexual relationship as a 10-year-old boy between the ages of 10 and 14 with a 60-year-old neighbor, and that sexual behavior in a pre-adolescent child shapes a little bit of your perception of the world. While I am a crystal meth addict, I identify as an alcoholic because when I look back on my life, I have a pattern of alcoholic thinking. And my thinking around sexual activity with an adult at the age of 10 was, I'm special. Adults want me in their company. I know things that kids my age don't know. That makes me smarter than you, better than you. Plus, I have a secret, and I can get anything I want from this guy. So I'll tell you, the things that I was getting from this guy were cream soda and cookies. So at an early age, I could be had for a cookie and a cream soda. And you catch me on the street saying, honey, I still can't. Hungry and feeling tired, and you've got cookies, I'm yours. Give it to me. And I say that with jest. I try to approach my life. I've had a really entitled life. I had not a lot of struggles in my life. I got sober. I started getting sober at the age of 47. I didn't really drink extensively. I didn't drink until I blacked out. I didn't drink to avoid things, but I can lie and manipulate and deny my way through my life, which I did for many, many years. To go back to what it's like to grow up to be a child, and talking about rationalization, minimization, and denial, I rationalized, minimized, and denied that sexual experience without being willing to take a look at it really until I was 47 years old. Now, when I have some clarity in my sobriety, I look back on my life as a young man and growing into an adult, and sex was an undercurrent for everything. Sex for me was currency, it was power, it was validation. And in my sobriety, as I was uncertain about my life in my early sobriety, if I could fuck you, I could control you. I got something I wanted from you, and I validated myself in the process. I went into treatment on December 13th, 2013. I was there for 90 days at Tarzana Treatment Center. And 6 days after I got out, I left the house at 4 in the morning with indigestion. And I was going to the grocery store to get something, and I met a guy, and we had sex. And then when he pulled out a pipe at the end of that sex, I made a sober decision to say yes. I had a choice in that moment. And I said yes, and I said yes without thinking of repercussion or consequence. I just wanted that drug. And thus started a new chapter of my life. I'm really grateful for that relapse, because in the process of that, I got some clarity. And I'm a guy. My sponsor was one of those guys who said, I'd like you to abstain from sexual activity for 90 days. And because I'd gotten willing to just take the suggestion, I did it without thinking and without question. On the 91st day, I was on the motherfucking phone. Hey, there's this cute guy. And he said to me the question that I now ask myself with almost every decision I make in my life, sexually or otherwise. He said, what's your motivation? He said, I'm horny. I haven't had dick for 90 days. And he said, what's important about that? Can you not jerk off? Can you not clean the pipes? Can you not blow off the stress? What's your motivation? And I had to acknowledge and get honest with the fact that I was lonely. I was not feeling great. I had an opportunity to validate myself. He was hot as hell to me. He was popular in AA. I'm like, oh, if I fuck that guy, then I can be friends with him, and then I can go to all the parties, and then I can wear the right clothes, and then I can do the right things. And I have a super non-judgmental sponsor who is very sex positive. He's like, Shawn, I want you to have sex. Go have sex. In fact, please find some sober sex buddies and have some sober sex and get yourself into practice. He said, the reason I asked you to take a 90-day hiatus from sex, he said, because as drug addicts and alcoholics, if you're anything like me, and I'm just like him and he's just like me, I didn't have sex without drugs and I didn't have drugs without sex. They became intertwined in my DNA and a fundamental core of who I was. So in separating the two, I was trying to learn to be present for an intimate environment, for an intimate connection with another human being, to be fully aware of my actions and to be willing to, sort of be vulnerable for another human being. I ultimately decided not to have sex with that guy, much to my chagrin and dismay, and I still look at him in meetings and I'm like, what I would do to you. But it was the right decision for me at the time. So here's the other thing that I want to say to this group. As Nikas has astutely pointed out, I'm not here to be the arbiter of your sex life. I'm here to tell you about my experience and what is working for me as part of a sober program. And we're going to do an exercise about creating your sexual ideal, and I'll share with you a couple of things in mind. But first, I want to say, as part of step 2, I wrote some conceptions of God. And I finished, and I was very proudly patting myself on the back for my honesty, and my sponsor said, where's the sex in this? I said, well, I can't talk about sex and God at the same time. And he's like, oh, child, sit down. Sit down. And he said, Shawn, if you don't have a God that approves of butt sex or BDSM or fisting or whatever it is that you want to do in the world that makes you comfortable, that is consensual, that is safe within the parameters of what two people agree to, he said, then you don't really have a concept of God. Sex is godliness. Godliness is sex. It's part of who we are as creatures on this planet. God gave us sexuality. He wants you to use it. And so I had to go back and look at God and be okay with God wanting me to take it up the ass or give it to somebody else or do whatever in a group of people in whatever place in a way that everybody agrees is safe and consensual. And my sobriety and my safety are my two paramount concerns, and the concern of the other guys involved in sex with me. And that was eye-opening for me, and I began to acknowledge at that point my issues around shame around sex. I think as gay men in this world, from the first time that you realize you're different from somebody else for whatever reason because of who you're sexually attracted to, for me, there was that, I can't tell anybody. I don't want to be that. I don't want people to disapprove of me. As a young man growing up in the 70s, Anita Bryant was all over television. And for those of you old enough to remember Anita Bryant, there was a whole movement about love the sinner, hate the sin, love the sinner, which even as a 7-year-old, I'm like, that's a load of shit. Either you love people or you don't. You don't put conditions on your love. So welcome to my early activist movement. So jumping to the present day, I've had 2 years in this program, and sex has been a complicated thing for me because even though I'm sober, I still exhibit those same behaviors, and Nikas alluded to that. There's the behavior is there, you just turn it over to God. So I still find myself wanting to validate through sex, wanting to medicate through sex, and two of my things now, when I go into a sexual situation, I have to ask myself, what's my motivation? Am I validating or am I medicating? I feel fat, I feel unattractive, he's cute, whatever it is. And I still make those mistakes, but one of the gifts of this program for me is my ability to be honest in myself in evaluating what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I think it's not great that I have sex for validation sometimes, but I recognize it for what it is. And I'm clear about it moving in, and I have a conversation with somebody, as it talks about in chapter 5, we have a conversation with people about this. I am a great, big, huge, enormous fan of having as much sex as you can possibly handle for the right reasons. I have made a choice that right now I'm not having a lot of just casual, indiscreet sex. I'm not on apps. I'm not on websites. And some of that is about sobriety for me. Some of that is about, and Nikas and I had an early conversation. I'm not a fan of bathhouses. For me, in my sobriety right now, as a crystal meth addict, I spent a good 75% of my using life shooting up, smoking, and fucking in bathhouses. It's what I did. As a result of that, I contracted HIV. I'm extremely lucky that, other than being, a monthly member of, a member of the STD of the Month Club, I never contracted anything more serious than that. HIV was bad enough. I don't do sex clubs currently, and I want to say that when we get to a sexual ideal, my sponsor was really clear. He's like, it's your sexual ideal for now. It might change in 6 months. It might change in a year. But I want you to do the things that help you get a sense of yourself in recovery. How am I doing on time? 5 minutes? If that? 4 is even better. I love 4. So in my addiction, fellas, I was a group guy and I was a camera guy. My apartment always had a camera running and there were never less than 6 people there. And I had the greasiest doorknobs in West Hollywood. Let's just say, trying to get out. Somebody was talking the other night, trying to say, I know every time I tried to make a dignified exit out of someplace, I just couldn't get a damn grip on the doorknob. And I was going to make this great indignant exit. Off we go, and I couldn't get a grip to get out the door. That was very much my experience. But what that made me feel like was loved, adored, respected. Pick a delusional thought of what that was. What it was for me was validating myself and trying to make myself feel more attractive, because it was a volume business. It was a volume weekend, 6 on Friday, 6 about 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, 6 more about 9 later that day. It just went on and on and on and on and on. So in my recovery currently, I'm making some decisions not to engage sexually without an intimate or emotional connection. It doesn't mean I have to love the guy or marry him. I have to know his last name. I set some experiences. I set some limits for myself, because I can be very compulsive and impulsive about my sexual engagement. I spent a lot of time as a 14-year-old boy on my knees in a mall bathroom, and that's what that does to me is it leaves me lonely, isolated, judging myself, and the judgment I get to work on. If I want to be on my knees in a mall bathroom, knock yourself out. But what it does to me is it makes me feel lonely and isolated and not worth anything because I'm an object, and it's not how I'm choosing to value myself and my presence in a sexual engagement currently. When I do have sex, I do offer a little prayer. I'm like, please let this be fun. Please let me not get triggered in the middle of it because there are sometimes, fellas, some of the stuff I struggled with was there are certain kinds of porn out there that are very reminiscent of the kind of sex that I had in my addiction. And I struggled in my early days jerking off to that porn. I just think that just cements that stuff in your DNA. And it's part of my sex ideal to stay away from using porn or anything that sort of represents that drug use. I pray that I've made a right choice. I pray that my motivation is correct. I pray that the guy's not using. And so far it's working for me. I will say I'm going to be 50 this month. There are guys in this room that are older than me. There are guys in this room that are younger than me. Right now, where I am in my life, sex is not my first priority. And I don't want to be that queen that stands up and says, I want a boyfriend and it's going to be perfect. Oh, God. I do. I want those things. But I want them to come in the right time. I want them, and I think that comes for me by being patient, by waiting, by not trying to fuck myself into a relationship, and for me placing value on waiting and getting to know the other guy before I jump into the sack with them. That's not everyone's story. I don't expect it to be everyone's story. I have a number of friends who have very active sex lives. Very active, and I would, hi kitten. There's another one too in the room, honey, but we're not pointing. And there's a part of me that goes, God, I wish I could have that because, I want to close with this. As gay men, we learn a lot of our sexual behavior from porn, and there's a certain amount of volume that's then associated with masculinity and desirability. And I completely bought into that because I became a volume guy. If I could fuck 6 guys in a weekend, I was a stud, and there you have it. And I look at my friends who have a really robust sex life, and I look at the balance that they have in their lives, and I admire them. I'm mildly envious of them that they're able to do that and I can't. And then I pause and I'm like, right now. And it might not ever change for me. Final gift of the program that I want to talk about is that I'm all right with that choice. I'm all right with if I'm not nailing 6 guys a week, a weekend. I'm okay with that because for me, it's working with my program, with my sobriety, with my relationship with God. And what I wish for all of us in this room is that out of this seminar and out of the work that we do, you get all right with what you want. And we get all right with the things that are best for us and given by God. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Shawn. And now MJ.
All right. Well, my name is Micheal John, and I'm an alcoholic and a crystal meth addict, and have an array of other, fun things that I did that I haven't attended programs for, but I did them all. So I began my life in Sandy, Utah. I was raised in a very loving, caring, religious Mormon household. And a small little community. I had 3 best buddies, and because I'm thinking back, what's my sex history? So we started sort of fondling each other, I think when we might have been 9 or 10. At age 12, I was reading in one of the church handbooks that homosexuality wasn't really cool, and I asked my mom, what's homosexuality? And didn't know what the word was, and she was like, well, that's men that are with other men. I'm like, oh shit, we gotta stop touching each other. I mean, we didn't really do anything other than fondle each other's genitals. But, you're an adolescent boy. I think everybody, at least all the guys I know did. But so at age 12, I began, and I love the church, by the way. I had a really great time in the Mormon church for the most part. But I started praying the gay away. Went away on my mission to the Mormon church, came back, and that was kind of meant to be my final thing that I was supposed to do. I was told that I would come back straight, and the church didn't really know a lot back then about genetics and all that sort of thing. And but in the process, until I was 24, I was never conscious during an orgasm. I never really had. I was really puritanical. Like, I adhered to what the church asked me to do. So around 24. I felt a real disconnect culturally with the church. I really felt like there were some things that, the way they talked about women that I just couldn't, live with. I found myself not feeling as comfortable culturally with the Mormon church. In that same time, one of my friends approached me. So we had a mutual girlfriend. What was her name? Well, let's just call her Susan. So Susan was very, very beautiful, very wealthy, from San Francisco, and she really wanted to get me to go to bed with her. Good little Mormon girl, but very feisty. And I was like, I love you like a sister. I don't want any more than that, and quit trying to play with my nipples. And so she went to one of my good friends, Steve, who happened to be an incredibly good-looking lifeguard at the Salt Lake City Country Club, and just that guy. We both lived in the same apartment complex. We were going to the University of Utah. And she said, Steve, you know what? He's just not getting it. I think he might be gay. Well, little did she know Steve was. So he came over and had a talk with me, and I thought I was the only gay guy on the planet. I'd never spoken about my feelings to anyone but my clergy. And so we ended up talking, and he said, well, she thinks you're gay. And then, well, I kind of have those feelings too. And I'm like, what? Really? So I had a million questions for him. He ended up asking me if I wanted to go to a gay bar, and I was very indignant. I said, well, I've never been to a bar, let alone a gay bar. Who do you think you're talking to? Super pure. I was, into it. Anyway, so we went to this little gay bar and, had some Sprite. And it was a Sunday night, and there was a smaller room, about maybe a third again the size this size, and then a big huge back room where there was dancing on the weekends. And so we went and sat back there and continued to talk. He asked me to dance. I was actually I was at school as a professional ballet, so I'm a dancer. Anyway, he asked me to dance. It was Maybe I Should Have Loved You by. Maybe I Should Have Loved You. Who sang that song?
Pet Shop Boys?
No. Woody Nelson.
Willie Nelson?
Willie Nelson.
Ooh.
So it was kind of a slow dance. And I'm like, well, yes, of course I'd like to dance with you, but I don't know how to dance with a guy. He said, we bear hug, just like boys and girls do. So we bear hugged. He put his hands around my waist and slipped them into the pockets of my jeans. And I'm just like, oh my motherfucking God. Man's hands are on my ass. So we left the bar and we went and parked above Salt Lake City, to look at the lights. It's November. So it was really beautiful, and we started making out. And honestly, it's when I was kissing this man, it's as if I had iron clasps around my lungs, and I'd just been used to breathing really short and shallow breaths like that. And finally someone had taken them off, and I was like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to breathe so freely and naturally. So we went back to our apartment complex, and he said, well, Mike, and I went by Mike back then, Mike, I'd like to ask you up to my apartment, but, only for 15 minutes, because I don't like to have sex with guys I'm really interested in on the first date. And now, mind you, you're talking to a virgin who had never been conscious during an orgasm yet in his life. I didn't even know what that was like. And I was like, Steve, I want to come up to your apartment, but not just for 15 minutes. So we went up to his place, and for the next 16 and a half hours, we didn't really have intercourse. I think we spent about 3 minutes, trying to have intercourse, but we were both sort of butt virgins, so, it didn't really work very well. But we did like everything else, and it was just, for me, it was the most organic, no guilt, no feelings of like, this is weird or uncomfortable. So my first experience sexually could not have been better. I did forget to tell you, when I was 11, I sort of semi-seduced my scoutmaster. I got him to pull his dick out and let me play with it. I know, I was an aggressive little kid. Very aggressive little guy there. But anyway, so that was my first sexual experience, really having sex with another man. And shortly thereafter, I moved to Los Angeles. I was a professional singer and dancer and aerobics instructor, and so I was in like top physical condition. And I taught at Jane Fonda Isn't Around, and I immediately found my way into that little A-gay pro circle. One of my friends sold advertising space in Edge magazine, and so we were always on a list to get in there, and I loved walking past the lines. And so immediately drugs and lots of drinking became a real big part of my story. And for Christ's sake, if you're a Beverly Hills hairdresser and you weren't doing cocaine back then, well, you shouldn't be in Beverly Hills. So drugs and sex and all that kind of craziness also for me became like, it was just part of the experience. It's like this all happened simultaneously. So then finally, 15 years ago, I got introduced to the program. And I knew that's what I needed. Before I got to AA, I've had a really pretty strong connection with God most of my life. Never meditated, really, which is something I think is so important to talk about. But I had an epiphany one day. I was on my couch and I felt like I was kind of taken out of my body and shown my life, like at a drive-in theater, and it horrified me because I knew that the imagery of my professional life, my personal life, my sex life, that imagery, none of which was the life that Michael John Darcott was ever meant to live. That's the day I took all of my drug paraphernalia, flushed it, got rid of it. I knew I could live without that. I didn't know what all needed to change, but I knew I could give up the whole drugs. Now, for me, that was basically just chemicals. For the next 9 months, while I was coming off of a lot of amphetamines, I lived on scotch and Xanax and pot to kind of gear down. And then I found my way. I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's where my journey really began to try to reestablish a relationship, a real active relationship with God. And for 9 years, I dibbled in and out, never meditated, never fully surrendered. And so the length of time that I was, accrued never really lasted long because I was always looking for a way out anyway and never found a real reason to stay. Sex during those years was, like Shawn talked about, it was still, even though I was sober, sex was about validation. It was about, what was the word you used about when you use it as a commerce?
Power for me.
Well, yeah, it was like, I'm going to use sex to get what I want from you and what it wasn't a healthy, I didn't have a healthy relationship with sex because I don't think I had a very healthy relationship with myself or with God. So how could I have a healthy a relationship with sex? It's all tied in there and it reflects itself. So after 9 years of, a crazy, dry, sober life, I finally I just woke up and knew that I needed to fully surrender. I needed to meditate every day. I needed to listen to my intuition. And I needed to not just surrender to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, but try to become like the St. Francis prayer. And whatever component that is written in the St. Francis prayer that I was missing, I needed to do that, which also meant love and forgive everybody, particularly my Republican family, conservatives. And I didn't know how that was going to affect my sex life. But so in June of 2010, that's when I actually began my real journey spiritually and my devoted journey to try to find a deepening relationship with God and with the program. I committed myself to daily meditation, and I committed myself to really giving myself over to spiritual principle and the programs. Now, this is where I made a conscious choice. My sponsors have been really terrific, and they haven't made crazy suggestions, and they've always been very pragmatic about we'll design this program, you got to work it out for you. But I knew that I had a fucked up relationship with sex. I knew that I needed a different and deeper relationship with God, and I certainly needed a new relationship with Alcoholics Anonymous. So I decided to have a celibate year. I decided to just, when my cell phone, there's sometimes that I'm on my apps on my cell phone and they stop working and I'm not really sure why. And then I look, how many apps do I have open? Oh shit, So I close down my apps, and then sometimes the app that I'm trying to work on works. Sometimes my phone, for whatever crazy reason, just doesn't seem to work at all. So I shut it off and I completely gear it down and then start it back up. It rewires itself and it works. I don't know why, I just know that happens. So I decided to give myself 1 full year of being celibate. Not celibate where I wasn't jacking off at home, I did that plenty, but celibate from having sex with anybody. And I did. And actually it was, I think it really helped for me to really take a step away. And I spent that year devoting myself to finding a new relationship with God and a new relationship with AA. And in the return, what I got out of that, I got a new relationship with me. And so after that period, what my experience sexually has been much more considerate. I'm super attracted even to a couple of you guys in here, and but I'm more concerned with, okay, so what's going to be good for my partner? What's going to be right for them? Is this going to be a healthy experience for them? Is this going to help them move forward spiritually or not? And me too. Is this going to be something that is going to reinforce my journey to God? Because I think the only thing that's important to me, my most important, what drives me today is having an ongoing and deepening relationship with God. And everything else that happens around that, whether I'm on my knees sucking a dick or on my knees in prayer or being of service, it's all about, I want my relationship with God to be my most important priority. And everything else that's about that, and I think sex is a great part. I think, of course, I pray to God before I go to, and I still go to a bathhouse on occasion. Sometimes I go for months and I'm just let's just get business handled. Let's get it taken care of. And in the parking lot, say a prayer. I'm going to go in there. I want to find a really wonderful partner to, explore with, have fun with for the next hour or so. And blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's 10 minutes. Good, done. Out of here. I got shit to do. Got to go grocery shopping. Trader Joe's is still open. But, but I want to make sure, but the sex that I have today is very different. It's respectful and it's considerate and it's something that I'm very conscious of. I don't take sex lightly anymore. I think it's playful, it's fun, but it's also something that I take very seriously. So when I invite someone into my home or into my room or around the corner, it's something that I want to invite God into all of that so that I'm paying attention. I pay attention to more than just oh my God, I'm so fucking horny, I need to scratch this itch now, irregardless of the consequences. I'm very conscious today of the consequences because I think it's important. And so whenever I have a sexual experience of whatever that is, whether it's a movie and dinner at my house and a good romp afterwards, or it's a quickie somewhere, whatever, it's something that I want to leave having absolutely no guilt or shame about because I've never really been ashamed of sex, I know a lot of Mormons are oh my God, sex, For me, it's oh my God, sex, yeah, But I have a different relationship with it today because I have a very different relationship with myself and with God, and so I leave sex feeling terrific. I don't feel guilty, and I don't take advantage of people, and I don't, I make sure that everybody is going to be okay with whatever is going to go on. So. Is there more that I should share? I don't think so. Wow, I wrapped mine up pretty quickly. That's it. Glad you're all here. Thank you so much. I think this is a very important topic. And by the way, how many of us, I think it is important to have sex when you're sober, when you're ready, and to have sober sex buddies, until Mr. Right comes along. I have heard time after time after time after time again, and I've been one of those guys that was, in a sexual situation, a pipe was pulled out, I'm super horny, and I'm just gonna okay, I'll smoke with you, just, let me smoke and bend over. And so I think it's important to have sexual trudging buddies. Mm-hmm. you're going to have sex, have some buddies, and to take care of each other's business and have it still be sober and respectful and according to page 69. And you get to leave guilt-free, not having had threatened your spiritual or physical sobriety and moving forward, as opposed to, oh, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I did that. Now I've got to go face people in meeting, raise my hand as a newcomer. And it's this whole, it's not even the physical thing, it's the emotional, it's the emotional thing you've got to like carry and work through, which I just think it impedes your spiritual progress. But now you've got to deal with all that and work through that, and let's not have to bring that into our sobriety. And so that we can keep having nothing that comes into our emotions or in our mind to impede us from moving fast forward to developing a spiritual relationship with, God, our Father in heaven, Father, Mother in heaven, whatever it is to you, to continue to deepen that. Here's the last thing I'm going to say about meditation. So we know that having angst and having resentments and all of that shit that goes in, it's just poison. It's poison. Well, I had a lot of that with my family. I was thrown out and didn't have contact with them for 3 years, It was really, really difficult. It was difficult for them and it was really painful for me. And I did a number of 4 steps with them and did my best to intellectually kind of understand what they were dealing with and everything. But in my heart, I was still like, it was painful. And I didn't think I was ever really going to be able to look at them with a lot of love and acceptance. Not really very authentic. But in June of 2010, I devoted myself to a daily meditative practice. And I did that, started feeling a little lighter, feeling a little better, felt inspired, and answers came during meditation and stuff. And one day, a year and a half in, I had a really, really, really deep experience in meditation. I went through 3 levels of like relaxation, and I'm not going to walk you through it because I would need to take more than my time. But I ultimately got to a place where I felt I had no body, I was just consciousness, and I was in this completely white space, and I immediately recognized I'm not here by myself. I'm here with God. And I was in that space for about 7 minutes and was simply bathed, soaked. It's like putting a dirty rag in chlorine, bleach, and having all the dirt particles, everything, OxyClean, whatever it is, and you pull it out and it's like fresh. Well, in that space, I felt so adored and so loved and so cherished by God, and had no idea I was going to get there, but I did. And came out of that experience, and never going in there for any, intent and purpose. It just sort of happened one day in meditation. I immediately knew, oh my God, I don't need my family to like me, to agree with me, I don't need any of that stuff that I thought I desperately needed from my family. Better fucking join PFLAG one day, or I'm gonna send them a ticking box. And all of a sudden, I just didn't need anything from Republicans. I didn't need anything from conservatives. I didn't need it because I already had it. Like, I knew I'm loved, I'm cherished by my Most High, and so. Hey, if you like me, if you don't like me, totally cool. I'm gonna love you anyway. And I turned around and I actually because I've been home now a number of times, and all I want to do when I go home is be of help. How can I help? Can I take out the trash? Can I wash the dishes? Can I listen to your next recipe you're gonna make and for Thanksgiving? I'm good with all of it. Like, all I want to do is be of service to my family in a way that I never thought I would have that true feeling. And I don't need them to. They don't need to know a thing or think. They can vote any way they need to vote, hate gay marriage if they want to. I don't care. It just doesn't matter to me today. And I never thought that wouldn't matter. And as an outcome, not carrying that angst into the bedroom, it's nicer. It's just lighter. Wherever I go, whether it's in bed or in the community or at work or whatever, it's just lighter. I don't have that. I can't wait to hopefully bring up how much I can't stand, conservatives. They're so awful and mean to us. And oh my God, it's just such an easier way to live. Such an easier way. And that was a direct outcome of just daily meditation. It was like a crock pot for me. It didn't happen quickly. It took time, but you can get there. And you never know what's going to happen for you. I think that, meditation is kind of like working out. Maybe the right kind of working out for you is going to be free weights. Maybe it's going to be cardio. Maybe it's going to be core classes of some sort, or, I don't know. So, but for me, that was such an amazing gift, unexpected. And it's such a gift for my family too. Oh, I was such a prick when I would go home. But anyway, there you go. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right.
Thanks, Michael. I want to share my story. Be pretty quick about it. My name is NIkas, and I am clearly an alcoholic. So I started getting sober in June of 09, June 4, 09. I've got these tattoos up the side and down my sides. Say June 14, 2009. So 10 days into the process, I had this huge spiritual awakening thing happen. I walked out of a meeting at the Salvation Army, and it said the third stepper on the ground was like 60 guys in lockdown rehab. And I just cried, and I kept crying, I just kept crying. And all these straight guys kept coming up to me and saying, "NIkas, we love you." And I'm like, why? I don't understand, why? It's like prison. People don't say I love you in prison. And so I walked out and got to the end of the street and kind of turned up the street, and I had this huge God moment. And reality was, I'll tell quickly, I went from the local view to the cosmic view, and I saw everything, everywhere, all at once. Past, present, future, everything. And I realized that I was an integral part of that. My awareness, this viewpoint, was an integral part of that. And but I realized at that moment too, I was not geolocated at the center of it. I was just a part of it. I was a part of everything. And this big thundering voice said to me, everything, all one, oneness, God. I was like, wait, say it again? Everything, the absolute, the totality, the whole enchilada, everything, all of it is the one. Oneness, which I'm familiar with the term oneness because I'm part of this oneness community, which is like awakened, enlightenment sort of thing. God. And I was like, oh my God. Wow. So I suddenly had this conception of God as awakeness, as just unity, as the idea of everything's one. Why am I had a whole shitload thing written about my sex story, and I don't know why that story just kind of coming out next, because I prayed just beforehand, and apparently that was need to come up. So, when I'd come back from relapses, my sponsor would say, he'd look at me and go, "Oof, you look like you got hit by a car." And he'd say, "So tell me about your daily prayer and meditation practice." And I'd say, he'd say, "Yeah. Page 85 through 89, which I had you read at the very beginning of this whole process, right? He says, upon retiring at night, upon waking in the morning, and many times throughout the day, how many times at least, ding dong, are you going to connect with God?" And I said 3. He says, that's not 3 times a month. It's not 3 times a week. It's 3 times a day. 3 times a day. That's what the steps say that you need to. That's how you got to do this thing. He says, and if you're not doing the program as outlined in Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know what the fuck you're doing, but whatever the fuck you're doing, you're getting relapse. He says, so if you want the promises to come true in the book, I highly suggest you follow the directions as outlined in the book. And so it took me a while. My last relapse was December, or my last sobriety date is December 2nd of 2014. So I had 5 relapses total. I've been at this thing since 09, and I've had 5 relapses. Relapse to me is, I've learned a lot in relapse. Relapse always directed me to exactly what I was not doing, exactly where my problem in my sobriety was. That's what relapse was for me. It was a pointer. It was God showing me exactly where I was not surrendered in this whole fucking thing. And so I learned a lot from these relapses. But my sponsor said to me, dude, you got to pray and meditate every day. So I finally said that in this last relapse, I was like, okay, good. I'm gonna pray and meditate every day. And so I did. I was at the Mariposa House and wherever else I was, these sober livings and the rehab. And I was praying and meditating every day. Solid. And then I got in this accident, motorcycle accident in this last year in August. And the amazing thing was that accident turned out to be like the most incredible event of my life because I was gone in a coma for 3 weeks. And in that coma, it was really interesting. I had to sit and watch people having unsafe sex, shooting up, and doing all this stuff. At first, I really wanted to I tried to say something, and I couldn't say anything. I was like, God, why can't you let me intervene? And through the course of this whole class, if you will, of me being in the coma and having to watch over and over and over people going through this experience, by the end of my, as I call training course, I just sat and I watched and I observed, because what was happening out there was the truth. What was happening between this year and this year was a lie. That is the truth. This is fiction. Fiction cannot fight fact. Fact can fight fiction. So what I had to learn was I had to actually sit and watch the truth. And I said, oh yes, I understand this. Why? Because I've done that myself. That was me before. I was that guy. And so it's really interesting because coming back into my body, the perception sort of changed. And it's a sort of different way of looking at things these days. And one of those things was, dude, you got to follow my directions now completely. And one of those directions was, in prayer and meditation, I asked, I said, I know you want me to do some sort of teaching and whatnot, but I don't know what to do. It says, your job is to follow whatever I tell you intuitively. Intuitive integrity was the word that was given to me. So I looked up integrity. Integrity means with a sense of wholeness and undividedness. So take this intuition and do it in a very whole way, in a very undivided way. And hence this whole sort of section thing came up. Hence I'm teaching a big boot camp thing on Sundays at the Mariposa House. It's like the whole process is really just turned into, hey, do this, hey, do that. That still small voice, it doesn't really talk to you in long sentences. It doesn't justify, it doesn't explain anything. It just says, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. And if you're hearing like a whole bunch of things like why, the reasoning why, I've learned that's my mind. That's my upstairs. That's totally intervening, and I can just turn that off. But the still small voice, when it tells me what to do, I've learned it's time to fucking just jump up and do it. So I don't know if the accident was, gave me the power and strength, but I prayed and I meditated every day up to that accident, and the result of my sobriety and the result of me being the part of this member of Alcoholics Anonymous, or this member of a fellowship, is really seeming like a direct result of that. I was going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff about my sex life, but I guess I'm not, because I think we're on a time schedule here, so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have 5 minutes?
You have 5 minutes.
I got 5 minutes.
4.
Okay.
TikTok, honey, TikTok.
Real quick. So, my first sponsor, in our very first meeting, okay, I've been hanging around. No, go ahead. You need to go.
Yeah, we have another.
Go ahead. Please, go ahead. Go right ahead. So, my first sponsor, in our very first meeting, I had just come off a huge run. I'm sitting on my living room floor, and he's East Indian guy. He's got one eye, got a little bit of an accent, a little bit straight. He says, we were talking about sobriety and everything, and at one point he came to this question, and I didn't see the question coming at all. He says, so, are you horny? I said, dude, I've been out for 17 days. I need like a fucking sandwich and a nap. And he's like, oh, okay, well, the fact of the matter is you're gonna get horny soon. He says, and when you get horny, I want you to go fuck your brains out sober. And I looked at him and I thought, what? He says, yeah, you're gay, right? I said, yeah. He said, I bet you had a lot of freaky tweaky sex, right? I said, yeah, I did. He's like, okay, so here's the deal. You're still going to have a lot of sex. And it's going to be freaky. It's just not going to be tweaky. But the reality is you got to go learn and relearn who the hell you are. Because your meth and drugs were so caught up together that you extract the meth out of it and you don't know how to have sex anymore. So you need to go relearn. But there's a catch. And I said, okay, what's that catch? He says, do you use those like apps or the websites or whatever to do your thing? And I'm like, yeah, of course. He said, okay, so here's the catch. You gotta erase all your profiles. Absolutely everything. If you can change your profile names, do that. He says, all the pictures you got up, take them all down. He says, what I want you to do is put new pictures up. And he says, and when it comes to rewriting your profile, he says, I want to you put your hands on your computer. He says, then I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to talk out loud. And he says, I want you to ask God, please rewrite this profile for me. I'm willing to write whatever the hell it is that you tell me to write. He says, can you do that? And I thought, yeah, I can. He says, okay. So, and I did. And I sat and I prayed and I did that. And my original profile said something like, my name's NIkas, newly sober off of meth. I mean, this is on my BBRT profile, right? Newly sober off of meth. Don't know if I'm a top or bottom. Need compassionate, kind people to walk me through this experience. Please don't have any expectations. I have no idea what's going to happen. And, I hit save. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can't believe that I'm being like this honest. And the amazing thing was there was a string of angels that showed up in my life that helped me. They were just kind and they were compassionate and they helped. And I got to learn whether I was a top or a bottom. And I got to learn that, I'm a top leaning verse guy. That's what I am. The cool thing about that sponsor is he says, you know what, if you're going to relapse over sex, I want you to relapse before you have 30 days. He didn't care if I was going to relapse. He wanted to make sure that it was before I was collecting chips, collecting time. He says the worst thing that we can do to a person is tell them you need to wait a year before you have sex. Because after a year, he says, if you go out over sex, that's a bummer. He says, I'm not sure people make it back then. He says, if you relapse over sex, you've just been out there. If you relapse over sex now, he says, you can tell me exactly what the problem is. We can identify it and we can work on that. He says, do you understand me? And I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of got it, because it was like I really, really understood that it was like, wow, this guy didn't have any fear. He was literally in faith. He was trusting his God and my God that I was going to actually learn and I was going to reapproach the way that I had sex through the actual act of going out and doing it. But through the actual act of actually asking for what I need. So this sponsor got me to God. God got me to write my profile in a very fucking sincere and honest way. And that profile, when it went out into the universe, attracted people who found that profile attractive, and they came back to me and helped me through this process. So it really wasn't until I decided to do that prayer and the meditation every single day. That was the key thing. I mean, I hear what you talk about it. It's just, and that's why I'm kind of a real nerd about this whole thing, is like, because I get it now. I get it why we're being asked to do this, because it really does shift your perspective. It really does allow you to have kindness. It really does allow you to be compassionate. It just allows you to, the way I talk about it is my daily practice. When I sit in the morning, I allow everything to be as it is, which looks like just a deep sense of relaxation. So what is surrender? Surrender has a noise. Surrender is just like, so every morning I have a practice of surrender, so that throughout the day, if I'm like, oh, that's not surrender. and then I stop and I go, because that's the place I want to be. I want to be in the natural, easy state. So that's my plug